member here at Post 773. I'm also currently ending my term as the 29th District Commander. The American Civil War ended in the spring of 1865. Yet even today, it remains the deadliest conflict in U.S. history. It claimed more American lives than any other U.S. conflict. The toll was so tremendous that it led to the creation of our country's first national cemeteries. So why is that still important today? After the Civil War, the year after, Americans and towns across the nation held tributes for their fallen soldiers in each spring, with gatherings, prayers, and the decorations of graves. These gatherings eventually became Decoration Day. And in 1971, it became what is known today as Memorial Day. So from flowers on graves to barbecues on beaches, we now carry the responsibility of giving thanks and celebration on Memorial Day. So what does it mean when we lose someone? Many of you already know this, but with your permission, if I may give you a few of my thoughts. When people come into our lives, they occupy a certain amount of space. For many of us, our mothers are the first to occupy space in our lives. Our entire lives as newborn infants is about 2 feet square. Our mothers fill the space of feeder, protector, and comforter, which is our entire world for those first few days. As we grow, our world gets bigger, and our mom continues to fill more of that space. But as many of you know, once you join the military, the space of your life changes. Your world gets incredibly larger. But some of those spaces in your life become temporarily vacant. Where do you go now for comfort, assurance, assistance? Those spaces begin to fill with your fellow Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen. If you've seen combat, you find new roles filled under the harsh environment of life and death, your fellow warriors. When one person is lost from our life, a hole is created. I have always believed that the amount of grief we experience is related to the hole created by that missing person. Sending a person off to serve their country usually means a family member, a loved one, a cherished friend. And not getting that person back leaves a large, dark, and painful hole in our lives. And for the fellow warrior, the one present, our comrades, in a very contracted and violent world where survival is very real and the buddy at our side fills the role of confidant and fellow combatant, they leave a hole that many of us will never understand. And no matter the size of that hole, the last thing on our mind is thanks and celebration. So how do we find meaning in this loss? Several cultures across the world celebrate the passing of one's life. Mexico, China, Japan. How about New Orleans? As veterans, we have a familiarity with some of these. As Americans, we are familiar with others. Mexico's Day of the Dead has migrated to many cultures, and New Orleans jazz funerals are well known across the U.S. The jazz funerals play soulful, mournful music on the way to the graveyard and celebratory, joyful music on the way back. Do you remember the feeling of taking a loved one to their final resting place? Soulful and mournful music seems appropriate funeral music. leaving the graveyard, they choose to give thanks and celebrate a loved one's life, to remember the highs, the accomplishments, and the joys. So is that what we're doing here today? Might it be, from flowers on graves to barbecue on beaches, we are now giving thanks and celebration on Memorial Day? Who are our lost servicemen and women? Navy Lieutenant Commander Lindsay Evans and Lieutenant Serena Wildman conducted multiple combat missions against Houthi terrorists in 2023 and 2024. The aviators both earned multiple combat medals for their actions in the Middle East. On October 15th, 2024, the two trailblazing pilots lost their lives when their EA-18G Growler crashed during a training exercise near Washington's Mount Rainier. Even within the safety of the United States, the military is an incredibly dangerous profession comprised of professionals willing to sacrifice for us. Sacrifice for others. This was the final act of yet another hero, Army medic Calvin Boatnight. At a ceremony that occurred just last year at Arlington National Cemetery, one of his eulogizers said, "He died so others could live." The speaker was not exaggerating. Specialist Boatnight was killed in 1965 while shielding and protecting 4 of his fellow soldiers in Vietnam. He was posthumously awarded the Silver Star. Approval for the esteemed award was slow, a common practice to which most people familiar with the military medal process can attest. As a result, his original gravestone had no acknowledgement of his Silver Star. It was through the determination of other veterans that the injustice was finally corrected, and his gravestone was finally updated in 2024. A native of Washington, D.C., Specialist Boatnight lived only 24 years, but his legacy is still remembered 60 years after his passing. On the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund website, Boatnight was remembered by his platoon leader. His fellow soldier wrote, "I witnessed Specialist 5 Boatnight's actions, which resulted in his receiving a posthumous Silver Star. I submitted by statement for a Medal of Honor, but it was rejected. Since the deadly confusion, I was the only witness to his intrepid gallantry. I will never forget those moments where a conscientious objector rose up and became a dynamic hero in the face of deadly odds." Unquote. So earlier this month, we decorated the graves of our fallen warriors. A sea of flags to show the honor we hold for them. If you haven't seen that, stop at a cemetery and look. And this morning, we gather in solemnity, in reverence, to acknowledge their sacrifice, to recognize the holes they leave behind. But when we look from the flags and the graves to the barbecues on the beaches, let's remember that it's because of the sacrifices that we are able to give thanks and celebrate.